Okay, so I wanted to bring up biodiversity once again. I've been listening to the news about coronavirus and the history of SARS viruses, and it made me think of this. So hopefully this is useful. All right, and I can explain it in a way that's really clear. Yeah, no promises on the ladder. All right, so let's just pretend that transmission of the virus includes not only humans but multiple animals such as pigs and bats. People are notoriously terrified of bats because of their affiliation with the transmission of disease, and it's true that many animals can transmit zoonotic diseases. So zoonotic just means transmitted from animals, basically. Okay, if you have whittled down the number of bat species, so human species, there's only one of us. That means that our genetic diversity is critically important to our ability to develop immune systems that are resistant to the genetics of a disease. So basically everything's happening at a genetic level. So bacteria infects me, and my immune system learns how to recognize that bacteria and launch an immune response that is more efficient, so that the next time I encounter that bacteria's genetic information, my genetic information or my genetic machinery is ready to go to protect my body, okay? And it can do it faster. Maybe I don't even get sick from the bacteria this time, or maybe I just have a slight reaction instead of a full-blown reaction. All right, so the same thing happens with viruses. What's weird about the SARS virus is that it has, what it does to our immune system is it appears to knock out one of the early stages. So we have multiple cells that are involved in our immune response. And so we have early stage cells that are sort of generalized cleaners and that clean out the disease organisms, whether they be viruses or bacteria or fungi. And then we have more specific cells that are involved later on. And the SARS virus, as far as I understand it, please correct me if I'm wrong, but based on the paper I read last night, it knocks out this thing called the macrophage, which is a generalist cell. Okay, so that's one reason why it's such a challenge. So if our immune system is to evolve to respond to that, it means it has to figure out how to recognize that SARS virus based on something in the virus, like a protein, and every protein that's produced is a result of the genetic code of that virus. So as soon as our immune system locks on to a protein, it can engage cells that will produce toxins that will kill the virus or the bacteria. The more diversity we have in our genetics in the human race, the higher the chance that we will win and have just a random mutation that will lead to a protein that can recognize a new virus or a new bacteria. Okay? So, how do I clarify that? It's like, okay, how about this? So, it turns out that a lot of organisms tend to be attracted, so we can actually smell through pheromones some indication of the immune system of another. Or birds, some of the coloration in birds, a lot of it can be just superficial and not say anything about the immunity of that bird, but some of that bright coloration can say to the females, who are typically not brightly colored, hey, I've got a really good immune response, and even though I'm brightly colored, I'm evading predators, so you should mate with me. So in mammals, we might smell an immune system that's very different from, like I might smell a man's immune system that's very different from mine. I am more likely to be attracted to him because our offspring will have immune system that is part mine and part his. And if it's very different, then it has a wider arsenal or a larger arsenal with which to attack microbes. So the more diversity, because humans are one species, the more diversity we have in our population, the wider our tool set, or the larger our tool set is to deal with adversity from a genetic perspective. If you have shrunk that diversity down to just a few species, then you have reduced the tool set of that organism's immune response such that they are more likely to carry a disease that they can't resist, right? And so then they carry that disease in higher numbers and for a longer period of time, which gives it an increased chance, and this is a lot to do with probability, an increased chance of infecting things that are not bats. Okay, just because it's in more bats and it's around for longer. If you have higher numbers of bats and higher numbers of bat species, then you have increased its toolkit with which it can attack these viruses and reduce the chance that it gets transmitted to us. That's my hypothesis about how increased biodiversity leads to increased protection of humans from diseases, especially zoonotic or animal-transmitted diseases. Now, there are people who study this. I do not study this. I just read the science papers because I like to do that when I can. And so anyone who wants to correct me on this, please come on board. Correct me. I think that's a pretty robust understanding and hopefully a clear explanation of why biodiversity matters. And so, I can imagine if the knee-jerk response is, let's just eradicate this particular organism, and then, let's say it's bats, for example, and then we'll all be safe. It won't work that way because, one, bats eat several times their body weight in mosquitoes per night, and mosquitoes transmit disease. So you get rid of the bats, then you've got an increased population of a bunch of different types of insects that transmit diseases to humans and to the plants that we eat. So you've actually created a huge problem. The real solution is to maintain biological diversity, and you do that by creating resources that are available to those animals. And what's the primary resource that all animals use? Plants, my friend. They're primary producers, and they're called that for a reason. Alright, I hope this has been useful and helpful, and I have a feeling I'm going to get a really lot of negative feedback, and I'm just going to turn that off so you know. I don't take it well.